Welcome to Feedback Fatigue. I'm Jake Hughes.
And I'm Katie Ritter. Jake.
Good morning, Katie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're recording this on your birthday.
Good to be back.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to me.
Happy
Today
birthday to Jake.
is number 33.
33, and your birthday is on
Yep.
Halloween, October 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't know what that says.
Everyone loves to make a comment
Yeah,
on
I mean,
it.
it's hard not to.
Yeah.
Um,
I've actually been surprised how many people have this birthday.
yeah.
I knew probably 4 or 5 people Halloween. Angie, our co-founder's birthday, is also today.
It's a special day.
Surprisingly common.
Special day. Speaking of special days, we kicked off the last episode talking about your half marathon prep, and it was right before you ran. So I think our our audience is dying to know what happened.
I'm sure.
They're just waiting for this next episode to come out. How did it go?
I finished.
Okay,
Which is
congratulations.
the most important part. It's a great day, fall in the Vermont mountains, foliage, sunny, it was beautiful. And I ran my race, and I think that's important. And I've been trying to figure out how to connect the story of the race to what we talk about here on Feedback Fatigue.
Okay, buckle up.
And I
Buckle
think
up,
the
everyone.
ran my race piece is very important. Yes, buckle up. So a little backstory before we get into this. This was the first longer running race I've ever done. I've done a couple of 5Ks, but nothing like this before. And that's primarily because before this past year, I always rode my bike to get exercise. I was not a runner.
Mm-hmm.
But it was this time last year where I was hospitalized with blood clots, which sort of changed my life forever in a number of ways. And I now take medication that makes bike riding no longer safe. So I can't bike anymore. I've had to kind of leave that behind. And, Katie, you'll love this. My condition was described to me by the doctor. I give him credit. As, say you're driving along, it's fall in Vermont, beautiful country road, and you see a herd of zebras running alongside your car in the field next to you. He's like, that's how rare your situation is.
Jesus.
Beautiful, beautiful analogy. Not particularly comforting.
Yeah, you're like, thanks, but cool.
So that's kind of like, that's what I've been dealing with this year. That's my situation. And I've started running as a way to stay healthy and kind of like continue on, fill that void of what I lost with biking. And along the way, I've learned a lot. It's been interesting to do something new that I haven't ever done before. And I got this watch because all runners
What's the brand?
need sport
What's
watches. I get the Garmin watch.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Approved.
And so I thought to myself, okay, it's probably good that I track my vitals, figure out what's going on. I don't really know what's going on inside my body. I'm a zebra now, apparently. So I need to kind of keep on top of my information. And that might be useful for me. And so it comes with a heart rate monitor, pace tracker, some objective numbers that you can keep track of as you're running. And I found that very useful in the race. Many years ago, I've done some racing before. I've done some mountain bike racing, but it has always come home from a semester of college, not making good decisions, limp out there, go too fast off the start, and then slowly pull myself across the finish line, feeling like crap. And I think this concept of getting comfortable with racing, it's about racing is not like a run or doing any activity by yourself, because there's just a lot of distraction. There's adrenaline, there's all these people around you. You need to pick where you can run. That might not be what you would do if there weren't people around you. There's peer pressure. So your ability to focus and run at a pace that's comfortable and not be distracted by all that's around you, it's a little bit challenging at times. And I think I did a good job in this race because of the objective measure of how hard my body is working, i.e. the heart rate monitor on my watch. Okay, so let's connect this to what we normally talk about here. Try to bring this back. And I think the heart rate monitor is a metaphor for voice of the resident feedback. You're, as a business operator, marketer, you're not operating in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
You've got
Mm-hmm.
competition, peer pressure, market dynamics, weather events. You've got all this stuff going on around you that you can't ignore as you're working. And having that objective source of data to tell you how you're doing can be very valuable so that you can run your race, right?
Yes.
If we think about where we've come from to extend this metaphor, 15 years ago, feedback was collected through the comment box on paper. Say that you got your heart rate tested twice a year at the doctor's office or something. You get that data point, you have some general idea of what your health is, but in the moment when you actually need it, you don't have any specific information to go on. You're just flying blind. In the past 5-10 years where feedback has gone digital, I almost think of this like the running with your chest strap on. You have a heart rate monitor that you can't see or use the information in the moment, but you can reflect on it fairly soon after the run, maybe know what your average was, kind of where you spiked. You can reflect on it with more relative information, but it wasn't there for you in the moment as you're running in the middle of the race. And if you're working too hard, you can pull yourself back and you know where your body's at. If your heart rate's still pretty low, you can be more aggressive. I think the introduction of AI into customer feedback is like having a heart rate monitor on your wrist. You can get that information when you need it. When it counts, it's nimble, it's quick, and you can use it in real time to make key adjustments that are valuable to you in that moment.
Nailed it. Jake told me he was going to start.
Does that make
Jake
sense?
told me he was going to start this with a monologue, and I said, "Don't tell me. I want to react in real time." I think that's great, and I think that's actually perfect for this episode with Kevin because, well, I have a couple thoughts. I was letting you finish. Were you done? I just wanted any more you wanted to add before I?
No, I was just, Kevin talks about this stuff, so I was going to connect to that.
Well, first of all, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being vulnerable today on your 33rd birthday. And
good day to be real on the birthday.
Good day to be real. And I think exactly what you said, it's really hard to stay in your lane. And what I think Kevin does so well, and we'll hear it, is he, as a developer, you don't think as being able to be nimble. You build it and it's there. And I think when you think of real estate as an asset, nimble doesn't necessarily come to mind. However, he gets really creative with use of space, listening to residents, understanding what they need, and giving really tangible examples of how he's shifted and adjusted just the experience within the four walls without needing to make, renovations and do all of these things that aren't necessarily, we don't associate with being nimble. So I think that it's a perfect segue into what Kevin talks about, is just being able to have that pulse and listen. And I think it's fascinating that Kevin, you can hear it, is really focused on his residents and their experience. And as we talk about renewals and focusing on what your residents are looking for, I think there's a lot of focus and sort of, it's not noise, it's important, but what prospects are looking for and what the next generation is looking for and what needs to be accessible. However, you can tell, has a really, really narrow focus on his residents and what they need to do to deliver an excellent resident experience in their buildings and what they need to build to deliver a great resident experience for their residents today. And so I think I get the future talk, and I think it's important, but I think it's also important to understand and be nimble and adjust to what's going on today.
This is one of my favorite episodes that we recorded this season. Kevin's ability to articulate where he thinks feedback is going was very compelling to me. and that use of AI to speed things up. What used to take months now can be done in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can trend it like you're having that heart rate data on your watch. Kevin made this comment. It feels like we're on the verge of things really accelerating,
Mm-hmm.
which landed to me. I do feel like we're at this moment where strategy is going to change. It's going to pick up real fast. And Kevin has great instincts.
Yeah.
He seems to get it for sure.
100%. Yeah, I'm excited for
This
this
episode is a must listen. So let's get into it. Season 1, Episode 6 with Kevin Wilson, the Director of Marketing at Southern Land Company. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, widewell.com/feedback-fatigue. All right, let's get into Episode 6 with Kevin Wilson.
Asking everyone this question, and I'm always interested to hear the answer, but to kick things off into level set is just, what is your relationship with feedback, and how has that maybe changed over the course of your career?
So feedback's really important. I would say it's a love relationship with it, even though it's not always good, or it might not necessarily be something we can take action upon that moment. But maybe I say love because sometimes it's good to get the different point of views to also understand things change, times change, what people want or need change. So it's good to be able to change with it, and feedback helps us do that. So even if it's something we can't do, it's a good learning experience is what I look at it as. That's why I think it's a love relationship. And again, sometimes it's hard to get some of the negative feedback. We all want to be perfect, but I think we all know there's no way to be perfect, especially in a industry that's always evolving. And that it's also something, it's people's biggest purchases, whether you're renting or buying. We're all different. So there's going to be different opinions. You learn how to take that feedback. Sometimes one or two negatives might not be what the overall opinion is of certain things, but sometimes it teaches us where maybe what I thought was the right thing was not the right thing to do. Just trying to figure that out.
We met originally at Multifamily Marketing East conference this spring, and that was great. You were on a panel there presenting. What's your day-to-day been since May? What have you been up to? How's the role changed and evolved as of late?
It's been extremely busy here. We have 7 lease ups currently going on at different stages. Yeah, so that's why it's been so fun and exciting. Different parts of the country as well. The product is outstanding that we're bringing to market. But again, it's been extremely busy because, as we all know, there's a lot that has to go into these things to get them open, to be leased up as well. So again, another area of figuring out each market's a little bit different. What are their needs? Each product's different too. Whether they're high rises or we even have a garden style community that's coming to market that is a little bit different from what the company has done is exciting. And then we also have others in the pipeline for 2025. So there's work being done for those as well. Trying to get ahead of that because since obviously myself and my counterpart here are new, that we were kind of brought in kind of in the 7th, 8th inning of things with these startups and we really had to fast track things to get them there. A lot of lessons learned and what can we do better for 2025. And then also we have our stabilized communities too that obviously need our attention to make sure that they are continuing to perform and meet expectations.
I thought in the beginning you brought up a good point about sometimes you can't always act on the feedback. And I think it's a good one. It's a good point to highlight because taking a measured approach to this and not being reactive to 1 or 2 negative reviews and then trying to get things in aggregate. I'm curious how you use resident feedback in the new product development versus the stabilized assets, and does it change? And how does your marketing specifically for the lease ups kind of change based on feedback that you take, and how do you use it?
Yeah, so I think there's, using that feedback, it depends on where obviously we are in the process of construction or something like that, but there might be a change made to, let's say, an amenity, something like that that might be offered, or maybe it's a lesson learned. Hey, we added these little small amenities, or we're doing these resident events here at kickoff, or as the units are being delivered, how many people do we need to live here to have a successful event? It could be just 12 residents. Maybe that is worth it, but each one's a little bit different. So I think we're learning as our buildings deliver, we're taking lessons learned from the first one that might be there, and what can we do with the next one? Same thing, grand opening parties, what lessons learned can we take from there? What feedback are we getting from management? What's the feedback we're getting from our residents that may attend a resident event? What's the feedback that we're getting from some of our stabilized communities about amenities that might be there? How are they being used by residents? Are they accepted? Because that might be something we're looking at putting into other communities. We're even in return already with some of our assets that have been stabilized and making changes there too, because over time, things change from what a resident might use it as an amenity. And I bring this up all the time. Tennis courts were popular in anything that was built, right? Now all of a sudden pickleball's big. So maybe people are changing those and converting those, right? Taking that same area and might even be able to cut it in half and do kind of a fire pit area or something like that. There's ways that the amenities and the uses have changed. We've even looked at some things where it's like converting an area maybe into a virtual reality / sports simulator, golf simulator room or something like that, that can be internal, which maybe wasn't something that was available or the cost was too heavy 5 years ago, 6 years ago when a building was planned, right? So some things, the cost too will come down on some of these items, might be cheaper than when they first come out, or you find out, okay, they are very popular. I mean, we're on a podcast here. You start seeing this stuff, right? You see amenities all the time now in some of these buildings where they might set up a podcast / recording studio, right? And it might not be the biggest investment in the world, but that might be something that is put in. 5 years ago, we probably weren't talking about this. It wasn't something that's brought up. So is there a way to kind of fit some of these things into established or buildings that are coming along still under construction?
I noticed that what's the name of your property that you're leasing up in downtown Philly? Is that the Josephine?
We have one stabilized in 1909 Rittenhouse, and then we also have the Josephine, which is right on the outskirts of Rittenhouse, which is right now going through a lease up, and then the Alcott is coming along, which is in Northern Liberties, which is very close to the other two sister communities.
I remember walking from NAA back to our hotel this summer, walking by the Josephine building, and I looked it up because it looked so impressive, and I was curious. And then a couple months later, I saw you promoting it on your LinkedIn page that you guys were releasing this up. So I thought that was cool. Has there been any specific examples of input that you've gotten from prospective residents on that specific property that you've implemented thus far?
So that building is just delivering now. So the feedback hasn't necessarily been coming in from residents there. But again, everyone that has been moving in is extremely happy with it. Again, as you said, it's a stunning structure that's been added to the skyline. I'm willing to say they have to have the best views in Philadelphia from the rooftop pool, because it's just taking a look at all the iconic buildings in the Philadelphia skyline, which is a huge selling point. The team there will work through, and our team in marketing will help with the resident events. We'll kind of see, hey, what's important to this building of the residents here? What's also important in Philadelphia as well? Might be, prime example, we're in football season, so maybe it's Eagles parties, stuff like that, right? Philadelphia is passionate about their teams, working around stuff like that. And then just always, sometimes the feedback too could come with just even simply moving gifts, like what's usable. We want to make sure things are usable. And I know this was something we had discussed a little bit about some of our other communities. We're offering free coffee bars. We might be giving tumblers. We do have resident events where, maybe they bring those items as well, try to be as sustainable as we can be and help from that standpoint, and also brand the community and give something that's useful and kind of tie in also to our branding for those communities and everything.
I think one of the underlying things I'm hearing, Kevin, a lot of the feedback and how you're repurposing space or changing up amenities is behind all of that feedback is this overarching theme of people spending more time where they live and wanting a community, and their live, work, play in the same area, working from home, and all of these different things. So I'm curious, any challenges that you face, and I think that comes across really clearly in your brand and what you're trying to do. I'm curious challenges that you faced in sort of getting to that point of how do we change this? How do we match the next generation? And some challenges that you've faced in trying to get to that point.
Yeah. So challenges would be, I mean, obviously there's always a financial challenge because how much will all this stuff cost, right? We can put together a wish list of things and somebody might come back and say that could cost, $1 million, let's say. Okay. Maybe we have to pare this down a little bit and figure out what can we do otherwise, or maybe that investment is worth it. So there's always going to be that, roadblock that will always come along the way. Another roadblock could just simply be space to kind of put these things into. So making sure everything fits of, okay, well, we would like to do these 5 things. Okay, do we have space to fit all 5 things? Because you know what? We might look at, for instance, like we want to put in saunas into a certain area. Well, how big are these saunas? And then the area we're putting in, okay, now you might have to be moving lighting. You might have to be moving plumbing. There's structurally, you might have to change some things. So it's like, does this work? And then that's where obviously our design team would come in and kind of help us there. So we might walk into the room and be like, oh, I think this looks great there. And then they're like, that doesn't structurally work. And, and it's like, okay, now we understand that. It could be, is it worth expanding, say, a teaching kitchen to make it so big? Or could a pared down version work just as well for what we need to fit our needs and still be able to do those events to help drive resident retention, stuff like that? So I think that's sometimes what we're looking at. And then also, especially in a stabilized community, is if this is going to be construction done in an area too, because how long might we have to take an area offline? Some places we might not need to, right? Because we're converting a room that wasn't being utilized or something like that, and it won't affect anyone. But if it's an area where, okay, we're looking to put in like co-working pods or something like that, maybe there's a way we can just shut off a portion of the room while construction goes on, keep the other portion open or something like that. So that could be like another setback that you just take in. And, it might have to be phased at that point too, because you don't want to take everything offline. You want to make sure the residents that are still there are still having a great experience and change with the times as well.
At this moment in time, do you have a process either for just you yourself or for your team to kind of overlay macro trends that you're observing within the industry with current resident reviews and surveys and feedback of those types?
Yeah. So, we take a look. We have a few different, obviously there's our reputation management system where we read exactly what's coming in. Again, we're still with a lot of new lease ups. It's not as much that comes through. We're trying to get more and more and more, right? I think as buildings age, you see a little bit more of that. We also survey tools. Sometimes it could be a simple one as, hey, if we're looking to add an amenity, please rank what you think of these, right? To try to get some feedback there too, even at that standpoint. It's also taking a look at what other communities are doing around you. What's popular there? How have they done it? Taking that feedback, hopefully having a good relationship with different developers and everything in the area to see, or different marketing folks and everything like that. A lot of people in this industry are very open to sharing information. So I think that's a lot of feedback too. That is very helpful, especially when they are around, because sometimes you're speaking, yeah, we built this and doesn't get used, or we did this and I wish we had double the size of it or something like that. So it's trying to figure all that stuff. And then it's also the feedback just from on-site teams too. They live and breathe this every day. They see what the residents do. They might have that interactions with the residents and they're going to give their advice. Again, you could be walking into a place and you see they're using like a normal lounge area and you have like 10 people working from home there. Okay, we don't have co-working space. Maybe we need to develop that and figure out ways so people have a little bit more privacy. Maybe they need the conference room area so they can, have meetings like this. So it's just figuring all that stuff out. And so I think it's like a combination of everything, really. feedback from on-site teams, feedback from residents through surveys, through our reputation management, seeing it with our own eyes. And then also, what are the competitors doing? Not even just the competitors, just other, it might not even be a comp in the area, but it's just another building in the area. That what are they doing? What's unique and different? What gets people excited? What gets used?
You had some really great creative ideas for activating unused space. So I'm curious, just a couple examples that you've done that made changes based on feedback that did not involve new construction, didn't necessarily, you didn't have to knock down walls or involve the design team, but just some simple changes but changes that didn't involve a construction team that you've done.
Yeah. So we even have areas like beautiful outdoor areas that a lot of times you use for yoga, right? The yoga is only X amount of time during the day. So at that point, we're trying to do double use or different uses for this. So it's actually used throughout the day. So, it might be making it like an outdoor lounge, gaming lounge, buying some of the giant game systems or different cornhole, Jenga, stuff like that, giant Connect 4. So it's something where we don't have to change anything else. We're buying some games. The investment's not a ton of money. We don't brand everything. And it repurposes the use of it. And it's also easy to move everything. So we're not getting rid of yoga. Yoga's still there. They can enjoy that. There's chairs. If people want to just simply hang out there and sit around, they can do that as well and talk and meet their neighbors. But again, it's giving the fun interactive portion. Generally they're situated near the pools as well and off of the fitness center. So it's if you want to take a break from the lounge and go do something fun, you can go do that over there. Even just in our lounges, right? It's getting more games again there. So we decided to go out and brand a lot of different, say, board games or card games, stuff like that. So the idea was not only to give residents these options, but was to hopefully build a sense of community where all of a sudden you have, okay, we got a Mahjong set. So can we get a Mahjong league started? Because these things are popular. You see these people playing this, Monopoly, just doing all these different games where maybe neighbors will meet one another and they'll start a group on their own. We'll encourage it. Again, that builds the sense of community around here. And some of these things are just small, but it's at least activating spaces that might have just been, couches, chairs, a couple tables, and people are generally just sitting in there or watching TV or something like that, and just giving a little bit more purpose to them. And again, a lot of areas too, it's in these lounges where we might have kitchens set up again, turn them into, teaching kitchens and stuff like that. It might only be a small tweak or two that have to be made, and it helps with resident events, again, adding something else there. But sometimes, a lot of times you already have the pieces that you need there, and it might be adding one or two pieces to it. And again, you're not rebuilding everything. So there's ways to kind of do that, maybe get different furniture that sits in that room to allow you to do presentations, stuff like that.
Have you been able to see the impact of all these tweaks, tactical changes in renewals? Is that coming through within the renewal cycle?
So where we're doing a lot of this is still brand new and everything. And again, a lot of people here on this team were new. So it's been newer stuff that's been in place, or it's stuff that we've been talking about that is in the process of being updated. But it's one of those things I can tell you the feedback has been great from the on-site teams and from residents as well. So, we do see that and the teams are informed by that. Tying it back to renewals, obviously that is an important piece because that's one of the big reasons why we're doing this too. It's not just to attract new, it's also to show our current residents we are invested in this being the nicest community around, making sure that you are getting the newest and greatest. We're just not going to simply let things slide. And we expect the services to be first class and top notch and top of the market at that point. And that's what we're going to deliver to you. So it's also delivering on that, letting people realize we're just not interested in just getting you in here. We're interested in getting you in here and having you stay here with us and build this community with us.
I love the sex example of just you build beautiful, big luxury communities. And of course, the amenities are keeping people there, but also the community that something small like that could create, and those connections. And it's not, it is all of these things together, but a good reminder that sometimes something that simple can lead to those connections as well, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the big thing. And that's why, and our owner is very big on the hospitality. And he asks us all the time. He likes to see what events are we doing. And we're doing multiple events every week. Like, it's important, like, for this company. And that's why, again, as you brought up, it's simple, small things sometimes. They're not breaking the bank, but if they're not there, nobody's going to do it, and it's like, okay, if we give these offerings to the residents, hopefully they will, and it's going to help their lifestyle and experience there too, right? And again, I do laugh with the Mahjong thing because it is one of those things. It's extremely popular, and I don't think a lot of people realize it half the time, but a lot of people are into it. It's the same thing with some of the other games too. You get a lot of people that might want to play poker or do stuff like that, or even just a simple thing of, okay, I want to get out of my apartment, go use some of these other spaces. Maybe I'll go Monopoly with someone else or something. It's a rainy day. I don't want to go out or something like that. So just giving those opportunities. And hopefully, again, we want our residents to meet each other and build that community. And I think we're seeing that, especially with the events that we're doing. You see a lot of the same people building friendships, which is huge. And again, that helps with our retention, right? You have more friends in a building. Hopefully you're less likely to leave it, right? Because now you do have a community there. It's not just you coming home every day, just going straight to your apartment, not talking to anyone, right? It makes it a little bit harder when you're like, well, I got 2 good friends over there or whatever. I don't know if I want to leave. So it's something we strive and hopefully implement everywhere that we are building communities.
Let's zoom out a little bit on perspective here, kind of taking in your experience over the course of your career and understanding how input from residents has changed over the years. What do you see as the next frontier? What do you see as the future of this information and how it's utilized by marketing teams?
So that's interesting. But I think this is with so much. And I know we talked about this at the conference, just everything, how much we're like right now on that verge of things are really accelerating. Again, I think I've been doing this a long time, so sometimes I don't like to age myself, but I've been in this over 20 years. So it's like you go back and like we weren't really, you weren't doing like digital, like you couldn't text somebody for a survey, right? That wasn't around. I guess at that point email was there, but a lot of it still was like calling people, hey, here's a card when you're going to go move out. Can you fill this sort of like survey out for us? And like, that's what we're relying on. Now with all these different systems, I mean, again, going back then, it's like there weren't Google reviews. Like this stuff wasn't around. Like you couldn't read this stuff, right? It's now gotten to a point where not only are there different avenues for people to do it. I mean, we all get this now too, right? When surveys first came out, they were like these long emails, right? Half the time you're like, I don't want to answer this. Now all of a sudden you get it simply on your phone. And it might be as simple, how many stars and 1 or 2 quick questions, right? And it's so easy now, right? You're inclined sometimes, you're like, I'm waiting for someone. Boom, 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 boom. And you just answer it, right? And it gives us that little bit of information. Then maybe you can ask for a little bit more. And I think it's just figuring out how to do that. Now, the interesting thing, what I was saying now is, obviously with all these AI systems built in, just going through that stuff is so much easier. Because when we were compiling all this other stuff, they come in here, okay, you might not get a survey done every day, so you're not staying on top of what the whole pulse is. Now these AIs can like simply say within seconds, like, here are the top 3 things that people like, and here are the bottom 3 things that are negatively like affecting you, and kind of going with that and studying that as things go along and as you progress. So maybe you change something that was negative, maybe you enhance something that was a positive. Okay, now what is it trending towards? And that trend is something that I think is easier to keep up with now versus back then when everything, it was like you were kind of looking at everything as a now or what was happening within the past few months versus what happened 4 years ago. Was it the same issue? Are we dealing with the same issue that's been going on all these years? Because then we need to fix that. Or is it a blip in the system or something? There's certain things that are problems, but we might get dinged in these surveys like, oh, the power was out for a week because of a bad storm. Okay, like we can't fix the power lines, but that where that's going to pull that in the system, you'll be able to pull that out quick, right? But now it's also taking the good. But I think somewhere along the line, I think it's going to be even easier to fill these things out. I just think the data that we're going to see from it will be a lot easier to pull and to be able to react on it a little bit more. And I think it's just like everything else. I think people get more and more comfortable with these shorter text message polls or maybe emails too, because the emails even are a lot easier. You stay in a hotel, it's like, give us a star rating. What were your favorite things? Check it off. And like, we'll massage that whole thing, right? So I think we're going to get there. And I think the acceptance has gotten better. And I think it continually will. I think a lot of us were in the beginning when these things were like 2 pages long, didn't want to answer because it was just, I don't have time for this. So I think we're getting smarter with how to do it. And then the way to deliver it and the ways to aggregate it have increased. I think we're just going to get there. I can't say otherwise. If I knew the idea, what we were going to do, I probably wouldn't be working here because I'd be building that. But there's a lot smarter people that don't figure that out.
So you're looking at shorter feedback, shorter surveys for residents, kind of, but potentially more often, a little bit higher rate of act.
I think it's also then pinging people with specific questions based on maybe what their behaviors are. And, it's like knowing, okay, this person, instead of just sending out a survey to everyone that didn't attend the event, it's like, boom, we know exactly who went, or, okay, we know who's moving out, and then trying to follow up questions there with what's going on there. But I think it's shorter questions too. Again, maintenance requests too. There'll be ways to tie that stuff in because be able to pinpoint exactly what it was, the reasoning, and probably, be able to check in again and be like, how's everything going with this? And having specific examples and kind of just customizing it towards that person. So I think all that is helpful. But yeah, I personally think the shorter ones are a little bit better because I think the response rate's better. So I think that's where it is. And then sometimes you can expand into more questions and you're not always going to get the answers then at that point, but the little bit of tidbit, that's why it's so important to figure out what is the information we're looking for. Like we were looking at one where a suggestion was rate this community. And it's like, well, no, and this was going to people moving out and how likely would you be to refer it? And it was like, we just wanted like, why are you leaving? Like, let's get to the point, because I can't have these question 5, plenty. So that was on a certain community, right? And then maybe there will be a follow-up if somebody's like, oh, I'm just leaving because I'm purchasing home or I'm moving out of area. It's nothing negative. It's just, a change in their life. And then maybe hit them with how likely would you be to refer us at this point. But again, it's like if somebody's like, there's a negative reason, probably not the best thing to start with is how likely are you to refer us at that point. So, I think that's where like these questions and making sure we're hitting on the right things come in.
100%. And I think this idea of it's almost like more real-time feedback, more slight micro trends, early reaction, early understanding of what might be going wrong through this information. AI can be very helpful with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Approach.
We might have an idea. Let's test it out real quick, see what the feedback is from our residents. And again, I don't think this was something, years ago, like we just it wasn't going to happen. Now, it's not that hard to put together, right? A survey real quick. Ping people, see how many responses we get. Again, if it's only 4 responses or something like that, I don't know if that's enough to base our decision on, or we could have to building response. We're going to have a pretty good idea about, okay, we thought this was a great idea and they're like, no, or we thought this idea was good and they're agreeing. So let's do it. Something like that.
I gotta imagine it helps with prioritization and AI saying, hey, here are the top 3 things. And now you're like, all right, our gut is telling us this thing. Let's just make sure that our gut is correct.
Yeah.
And I think there's fear around people asking residents too much information, but I would almost posture like, I'm just putting myself, I can only speak for myself, but I'd probably be much more likely to answer one question multiple times throughout my lease versus one email with pages and pages and pages of questions. Just kind of how we are operating, like quick text, yes, no, done. Like I'm probably going to do that more times than the one time or biannual long survey. So I think the short, quick questions is certainly where it's headed for sure.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I would follow up too with the whole. I do think it's important just to understand too. It's like we're not doing this all the time, right? Because as you said, it's like you want to be cognizant of your residents' time and everything. So it has to be important. This information. Again, you're moving out. That's important. Like we would like to know that information. You move in. We'd like to know how everything's going on. Like we want to make sure you're receiving great service. People are looking at changing, upgrading amenities or something like that, and we want to send out, residents would find that important. After a maintenance request is generally pretty important because it's just like getting something serviced. We want to make sure we met your expectations. So but we're not going to come out and be like, all the time, be like, we're going to have movie Friday. These are the choices of movies. Like that might not be like, we're not doing that every week. Right. So it's making sure that is the important thing. As you said, it's like making sure we are asking the right questions at the right times too. And we're not going to oversaturate them with too many questions. So making sure we are doing it when it is important to us.
Okay, we'll wrap it there.
Thank you, Kevin.
Appreciate it.
Kevin, thanks for joining us on Feedback Fatigue. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Great time. Enjoyed it.
Awesome.